I didn't know this till I moved out here and really started working in the industry, but I am a little bit stunned that there are this many StarCraft 1 fans that don't seem to understand what happened and why it matters so much, and also how bad it was for StarCraft 1 and impacted esports and impacted StarCraft 2. Everything that we are at in esports now is kind of rippling from this. Okay, we are going to be reacting to the video StarCraft 2 is dying, but Brood War lives forever. This is a video by Saiyan KCM. He is a StarCraft caster for Brood War. Actually, he's a very good caster. I've watched several of his videos. I would check out his YouTube if I were you. Be sure to subscribe to him. He made this video. What is this? This is 6 months ago. I wanted to react to this and give my own commentary and give my own thoughts and opinions on it.
Blizzard is abandoning StarCraft 2, with tournaments being cancelled, viewership is falling, prize pools are plummeting, and pro gamers are heading back to Brood War in waves. Why is it that a buggy game...
So real quick, he said... let me get my camera down here a little bit more. 1 second. There we go. He said, StarCraft 2 tournaments are being canceled. This is true, specifically GSL Super Tournament. Second, what was the other critiques?
Are heading back to Brood War in waves.
Oh, pro gamers are heading back to Brood War in waves.
Made in 1998 still holds up to this day, while its sequel with better graphics that receives attention and continuous updates from the company that created it is slowly dying. Why would pro gamers prefer to play this over this? Did companies of the past just magically create great games out of some kind of freak accident? How come they can't replicate that success with new releases? Let's take a look at StarCraft Brood War and StarCraft 2 as an analog for the wider games industry, and try to understand what went wrong and how companies can avoid these problems in the future.
So, I think he lays out his thesis here. I think it's an interesting one. I don't know if it's presented totally fairly here. We had StarCraft 2, so there have been tournaments canceled, but we also were picked up by Gamers 8. Gamers 8 is doing a lot, well, the Saudis, I should say, are doing a lot to basically save esports at this point in time. We had the biggest prize pool ever at Gamers 8. It was massive. The viewership was off the hook. So it's like, yes, there are tournaments that are shrinking, and a lot of this is just due to the collapse of Blizzard. And I want to lay that out here. I think he makes some very good points about both games, but I think you really need to zoom out to what's happened with Blizzard, how much they came in and did for StarCraft 2, and how, as the Morheims are pushed out and all the esports staff left, how much that affected StarCraft 2. So I want to give some more commentary to this. Again, I think it's a great video. Let's go ahead and hear his argument for the two.
As a massive Brood War fan, I could go on and on about the greatness of this game, and I will. But first, let me say that no one was more excited about StarCraft 2 than me. I played Brood War from the time I was 10, right up until StarCraft 2 was released. The trailer for StarCraft 2 was the most epic, hype announcement I've ever seen, and I still remember the feeling when I first laid eyes on it. The moment...
By the way, me too. I remember having a shitty summer job at my university. I got to live in the dorms, and I had to like paint dorm rooms and move furniture and mattresses and stuff. The job just sucked. And I remember seeing this trailer and being like, oh my god, I think my life is going to change.
The music started.
Oh my god.
It sent chills down my spine. And when he said, hell, it's about time, tears burst from my eyes and my mind was made up. StarCraft 2 would be the greatest game of all time. The sad reality, though, was, although I reached Masters in Wings of Liberty, I hardly played Heart of the Swarm, and Legacy of the Void I skipped altogether. It wasn't a problem.
So the game did get a massive hit with Heart of the Swarm. And by the way, for me personally as a caster, that was my least favorite time for StarCraft 2. I felt like the Swarm host especially just kind of changed the whole pacing of the game. A decision made by the not the balance team actually, but the game designers, which the balance team then had to try to figure out how to make this, you know, competitive and playable. But Heart of the Swarm, big hit for the game, no doubt.
With the graphics,
so
or
I get
the smoothness of the gameplay, it's just the game wasn't really fun. I got back into Brood War just before the remastered edition came out, and I have stayed into it ever since. And I'm not the only one. Even the well-known casters Artosis and Tasteless have gone back to streaming Brood War regularly. So what is it that Brood War has that StarCraft 2 doesn't? By all rights, StarCraft 2 should have been able to capitalize on the hype from dedicated players like me, as well as the technology of the times, plus their massively increased budget to create a better version of the game that could capture their audience. However,
well, hold on.
It may be these factors themselves which hindered the success of the project. The large team at Blizzard with...
So initially, this is where I wanted to give some pushback here. StarCraft 2 was massive when it came out. It was the best-selling game of all time. Nothing had matched it. It jump-started global esports the way that StarCraft Brood War jump-started Korean esports. If you talk to the founders at Twitch, the game that everybody was playing actually was Justin TV back then. If you guys didn't know, Twitch was originally called Justin TV. These guys in San Francisco had basically figured out how to live stream from a computer, like a laptop or a desktop, which was crazy for the time. They made the site Justin TV. Suddenly, players like Hydra and these other good StarCraft 2 players started playing on there. And a lot of those Twitch guys will attribute the big success to Justin TV, which later became Twitch, to StarCraft 2 and how viewable it was as a game. So if you might be watching me on Twitch right now, like, it had a massive impact. And I feel like occasionally people talk about this like it had failed on some level when they're not going to acknowledge, the real hit that it was at the time.
Their massive budget and advanced technology allowed them to create outstanding cinematics and improved graphics, but it also allowed them to engage in what I like to call artificial balance. The live service allowed Blizzard to continuously change and rebalance their game on the fly, adding new units, buffing or nerfing, fixing bugs, and all of this should have kept the game fresh and fun for the players, right? Well, kind of. This is how artificial balance works. The creators needed each unit to fulfill a specific purpose. They have an image of how the unit will function and what role it will play, and they tailor the unit's abilities and stats to suit that role. When players start to use the units, they often find powerful ways of using them that were unintended by the developers. The team at Blizzard is then forced to make changes that in turn force the players into using the units correctly.
So I don't know if I agree with this. I mean, I think they basically made a handful of units with some ideas, but I don't remember Blizzard ever trying to change units because things weren't being done correctly. You basically there's two kinds of games, okay? There are the StarCraft Brood Wars, Smash Melee, I don't know, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 maybe is another example of this. Games that they didn't have live service, they didn't patch, and it turns out they just aged perfectly. So that's incredible. I mean, I guess it was going to happen to a couple of games, right? Let's use Smash Melee as an example. People are still learning about that game. I believe that game is actually still growing. Viewership's very good. People are still learning new things. The depth is there. There's another video I saw just a few days ago about the original Tetris on NES, where people are still figuring stuff about that. So that's incredible. But any game developer in the modern era, and by the way, I guess this was back in 2012, but of course you'd want a live service update. You can stop cheating. You can try to balance and improve the game. And I think Blizzard, although there were mistakes made certainly in Heart of the Swarm, was in a situation where they were steadily improving things. So let's let them go on here.
When certain races discover new strategies that break the balance.
And by the way, this image here, this is a problem for StarCraft 2. The death ball mechanic, early infestors spamming out infested Terrans. There was definitely an issue with air units basically becoming death ball-y. So, sorry.
The game designers are forced to step in and introduce patches that restore the balance again temporarily. This continues as new expansions are released and all the new units that come with them are added to the game. All these changes and patches force players to constantly change and adapt to new metas and strategies that evolve artificially based on what new changes have been introduced by the development team over the...
Yes, but that's what they did in StarCraft 1. StarCraft 1 had an expansion pack called StarCraft Brood War. There could have been another universe if Blizzard had, given StarCraft 1 more attention, where we would have had a few more expansion packs. I think people forget because we've been watching Brood War for so long. Brood War was like the heart of the swarm to StarCraft 1. We had StarCraft Brood War. They did this with Warcraft 2 Tides of Darkness, and then Warcraft 2 Beyond the Dark Portal. So we were in an expansion pack version of the game, and that did introduce new changes. I mean, Stim became way better when medics were introduced. Suddenly DTs were not just a unit in the single player, they were part of the actual multiplayer experience. Yeah, Warcraft 3 had one too, so I just felt like I didn't totally agree with that argument.
13 years, Blizzard, through massive effort, has balanced and rebalanced the game, but they have finally decided to give up. They announced that the patch 5.0 would be the final patch, and that no further patches would be forthcoming. However,
So that is true. But that's not because Blizzard, in any type of strategic move, has backed out of working on StarCraft 2. The entire department that was running the game left or was fired. I mean, this is why it's exciting Bobby Kotick is gone, but you got to understand, like, do you remember Warcraft 3 Reforged? I don't think there was a single community that got more fucked over than the Warcraft 3 guys. A lot of the live service stuff, a lot of the things that Blizzard was doing, there's barely a BlizzCon, if you want to call it that, this year. There was no esports there. The company has been completely transformed and is continuing to change right now as all these people have left. There's almost no game designers left at Blizzard, by the way. I want to just think about that for a second. There's a lot of people on the art team. All the game designers are gone. So while this is true that Blizzard wasn't going to be patching it, that's because there's nobody at the company. It's like a restaurant and everybody's quit and there's nobody cooking in the kitchen. So just to make that point there.
Much public outcry, they have chosen instead to leave patching and balance of the game to community members, with the first community-led SC2 patch 5.0.11 being released on January 25th, 2023. It's unclear how many more patches there will be in the future, but it's easy to see that the game is completely unrecognizable from its original 2010 release. Brood War, on the other hand, remains...
But it's unrecognizable partially because it's had 2 different expansion packs come out.
Largely the same even to this day. From the Boxer Nada era of the early 2000s to the Flash Jaedong Bisu games of 2007 to 2009, and then the modern remastered era, same Brood War. You can go back and watch any Brood War game throughout history and copy builds or strategies that could still be useful to this day.
That's 100% true. So we've all been in the same game. This is a cool, unique advantage to this, and again, it comes from the 2 different worlds of games. But let's also not forget, Brood War was just the last expansion to StarCraft 1. There were tournaments and matches. They were on battlereports.com, if you guys remember that website. That was pre-replays, where, there were serious matches on maps like Hunters and I think Boneyard and other maps that aren't really that good, that playable. And yeah, I mean, that was the final iteration. Look, for Legacy of the Void, which has, by the way, been the majority of the lifespan of StarCraft 2, that's what we've been playing on. Legacy of the Void has been out for longer than Wings of Liberty and Heart of the Swarm combined. So yes, it's in the same state, and we're in the same state here. I mean, there's been some patches and some changes, but it's just important to note that, like, I think from science perspective, it feels like the game has changed, and it has changed and been patched, but so radically, whereas we're just in the last expansion of each game.
This has created a legacy effect that means even players who have...
But there is an advantage, like what he's about to say, there is an advantage in the fact that you can go back and you're looking at the same game and we can explain it to each other and follow it without going like, what is that unit? What is this thing? I thought this was cheaper or weaker back then.
Haven't played the game in over 10 years can still enjoy watching new matches in the modern era,
just like he
because
says.
The units function exactly the same way. How can this possibly be balanced, I hear you say? Well, it's not. And it is. The units and abilities are completely imbalanced, but at the highest level of competition, all races are represented. No race is able to consistently dominate these brackets, and the competition remains fierce and exciting to watch. So did Blizzard just luck out and create a perfectly balanced game in 1998?
You serious?
The game changes continuously and is maintained through what I like to call organic balance. Races fluctuate in power based on the cutting-edge strategies and builds developed through countless hours of practice and study by the best.
One thing I want to point out here, nobody knew that this was going to be the greatest esport. Okay? Blizzard didn't know that this was going to fill up stadiums. Or that a quarter of a century later we'd be playing it. So, I mean, it's incredible. And my view is that you balance Brood War by the maps. And by the way, they've been doing this with StarCraft 2 as well. They have massive changes in the maps. Sorry, I'll let him finish his point. Though.
Each build has a different power level based on the map, and this is how organic balance is attained. Maps with short rush distances favor aggressive builds. Island maps favor airbase play. Wide open spaces favor Zerg. Tight, narrow spaces favor Terran, and so on. Map makers create new and interesting methods of balancing their maps by structuring them in such a way that no race is favored over another. These structures have to evolve over time to meet the demands of the newest strategies and builds. So maps that were well balanced in 2008 are no longer balanced in 2023 because strategies have evolved over time to create new difficulties for map makers to overcome. To illustrate organic balance further, let's take a look at an example.
So I just want to point out
the creators of Brood War had only their own.
Hold on. So they balance maps the same way in StarCraft 2. And they've continued to do that over time. So I feel like his analysis on what they do to balance some of these Brood War maps is true, but I feel like there's arguments being made that are gushing over Brood War that are actually happening in StarCraft 2.
Experience playing the game as a template for balancing Brood War. They created the units based on the themes and lore of the game world. They took a look at their own games and created maps to suit the way they believed the game would be played. It's clear from looking back on those Blizzard maps that they had no clue what the fuck they were doing. These maps are absolutely unplayable today, and if it weren't for the map editor built into the game, StarCraft Brood War would have died a quick death. The team at Blizzard had no idea.
So, I mean, I guess, but again, yeah, like he's going to say, they had no idea. I mean, yeah, you're right. The map editor is good, and that allowed us to do it, but I don't know if you can be too critical of the maps that they made. They certainly never intended for this to be the competitive juggernaut that it was.
That what they were making would become the first esport. They strived to create a cool, fun game with lots of interesting and powerful abilities and skills. Each race is incredibly stylized and plays completely different from the others. Game-changing abilities lead to breakpoints where the pace, tempo, and playstyle for both players has to alter significantly the moment they become available. In addition, all of the units and abilities are utilized differently from how the design team originally anticipated, and the strategies developed by pro players are mind-blowingly different from how the game was originally meant to be played. Yet the game is balanced to an incredible degree through organic balance, a combination of players and mapmakers' creativity and passion. Blizzard went public with the news this year that they will no longer be supporting StarCraft 2 tournaments. That means that starting 2023, the SC2 Pro scene will have to switch over to a purely sponsorship or crowd-funded approach. It's a hard transition for any esport, and we have already seen prize pools get slashed. In Korea, GSL Super Tournament was cancelled, and the overall prize pool in GSL has dropped by 80%. The ESL is putting up a buttload of cash to try and pick up the slack that Blizzard has left behind.
Everything he's saying here is true.
Still, the overall prize pool for these international tournaments will drop by approximately 50%. It's unclear whether prize pools and overall interest in the game will ever recover or continue this downward trend. Meanwhile, Brood War grew its pro scene in a purely grassroots way. What little prize pool Blizzard provided in the World Cyber Games was overshadowed by a swelling of support emanating from Korea. Here, StarCraft...
Did Blizzard provide this the prize pool for WCG? I actually don't know. Maybe they did. WCG was extremely important for any foreigner back pre-StarCraft 2. So let me go back a second.
Blizzard provided in the World Cyber Games was overshadowed by a swelling of support emanating from Korea. Here, StarCraft quickly grew into a major sporting event, and by 2001, stadiums full of fans would be cheering for their favorite players, while the entire country watched at home on television. This was the birth of esports, and far from supporting these events, Blizzard sought to shut them down with litigation against the Korean team.
So that's this is untrue. This is something I want people that are fans of StarCraft to understand, because I didn't know this till I moved out here and really started working in the industry, but I am a little bit stunned that there are this many StarCraft 1 fans that don't seem to understand what happened and why it matters so much, and also how bad it was for StarCraft 1 and impacted esports and impacted StarCraft 2. Everything that we are at in esports now is kind of rippling from this. So let me just let him finish his point, and then I'll jump back in.
TV networks. From the very beginning, Brood War was struggling to survive and only kept alive through its freakishly loyal fan base. Only the most basic support for online play was provided, with no ladder or ranking system. Community members had to step up to provide...
Okay, I just want to make sure he got to the TV point. So the community support was there, and I think that's a great criticism of Blizzard, is that they did not do enough to run a ladder or really do anything, especially in foreign StarCraft. But you got to understand, StarCraft 1 was put on Korean TV illegally. It's IP theft. It's intellectual property theft. And I've worked with Blizzard for, I mean, over a decade, right? I was talking to the Blizzard people back, like, before StarCraft 2 was even out. I had some communication with them. And they always wanted to, they liked esports, they wanted to collaborate, but the Koreans locked them out and also kept a lot of, I mean, you know, we're very cagey with the pro gamers. I think there's a universe where, and this is something I think people don't think about, had they collaborated with Blizzard and worked with them legally, there's a reality StarCraft Brood War would have been bigger internationally instead of a weird microcosm that it is in Korea. And I know that, you know, this is kind of the attitude of the time that we're in, is Blizzard bad, Blizzard stupid, Blizzard, you know, evil. The Korean scene did a lot to basically insulate themselves and alienate their relationship with the publisher. And, you know, here we are. And when, by the way, when StarCraft 2 came out, none of the StarCraft 1 Korean pros were allowed to play the game in the tournaments like GSL that I was casting, because they didn't want to have anything to do with Blizzard. So I just want that critique to be in here, because occasionally I hear that, and I actually thought this too before I, you know, started working in esports and moved to Korea. I was like, why doesn't Blizzard do anything? Then you realize that they were kind of being, you know, caged out of the system. Now, to his next point, this is also true, and I think that, you know, Blizzard, I think, had they been smarter strategically, they also could have made their own pro leagues and tried to put this on TV in the U.S. and other places as well. But it's pretty brutal what they actually had to go through in this moment. The same reason why when you hear people say early on, why does StarCraft 2 not have land? Because they had their games stolen and had tournaments running illegally in parts of the world they couldn't control. Beyond that, they also are able to update and patch the game. And so, you know, that helps as well. Someone in the chat says the point you're making may be true, but it does. Don't be silly. Blizzard is bad, no doubt of that. They killed SC2 because it wasn't making them money. Well, I don't think in binaries maybe the way that you do. And they didn't kill StarCraft 2 because it wasn't making them money. The whole company has collapsed, and it didn't get the support it needed from Activision. So
ranked service, and the map makers had to balance the game indirectly, as I mentioned before. And I am so glad for this. So happy that Blizzard kept their hands off this game, because it appears that everything they touch, even if it starts out good, eventually turns to shit. I can't hate on them completely though, because in 2017, they released StarCraft Remastered, which gave the game a full graphical overhaul, but did not change the base game aside from one or two bugs. And they also added a ranking system.
Yeah, StarCraft Remastered is the best thing Blizzard ever did for StarCraft 1, 1000%.
As fraught with problems and hacking as that is, it's great to have. It's important to note that Brood War pro gamers asked that no balance patches or other bug fixes be implemented into the game. Why? Because they know that the way Brood War is, with all its bugs and imbalances, makes it perfect for competitive play because it creates a level of difficulty and complexity that has not been matched since. Brood War is many things, but no one can accuse it of being easy. The unit collision in the game is very silly and often causes your forces to move in mysterious ways. Simply getting up and down a ramp can be incredibly difficult, requiring precise movement and multiple clicks. It all seems incredibly annoying and foolish, and you might think it should be fixed, but changing the unit collisions would remove an important part of the game. Body blocking is a huge part of battles in Brood War. Yes, it's very hard to do and frustrating for new players, but at the highest levels, it allows players to exploit unit collision to do some incredible things. If it was changed, then the game would become much easier, but allowing units to move smoothly by each other would break certain balances in the game and remove the ability to use a skill that has been honed by players over years of practice. Other particularities with the differing units means that it takes time to master each type. Some units are responsive and agile with small quirks, and others are clunky and slow with annoying pathing. These quirks, combined with the limitation on army size, being that you can only control 12 units at a time, and there are only 10 hotkeys to work with, creates an incredible level of difficulty when trying to move large armies.
Yeah, he's right about that. This is something, I almost can't have this conversation anymore with people that don't understand StarCraft 1, is people are like, I need to be able to control all my units, and I'm like, you do not understand. If you think you should be able to move your whole army, then you do not understand how the game works. Like, when I would teach people, and I've taught like a lot of friends, a lot of my buddies in college and high school, Brood War growing up, and like the first thing I teach them is the worker split, and people would always go like, yeah, but I want to like learn how to Dark Templar rush, and I go, okay, but first of all, you gotta understand the start of the game. This is the game: is you split the workers. You send each worker to a different patch. You want to practice that 20, 30 times till you feel like you can do it. You can juggle them out. And some people go, oh, okay, so is that part of the game too? Yes, that's the game. Macroing out of 13 gateways that are not all on one hotkey, that's the game. Having 6 control groups of units that you're moving around the map, that's the game. And a lot of people that I've talked to from StarCraft 2 who never played Brood War can't stand that. But then if you ask them, okay, when your workers spawn, you have to cycle which patch they go to, right? Would you change that? And they go, no, that's part of the game. And I go, okay, well then you do kind of get this then. If you ask them, what if he had if we automatically made it so that you could just warp things in without having to even do the command? What about that? What if we take it a step back further? Then they go, no. I mean, I want to be able to do that. So this is a weird, and again, I've had this conversation with people so many times, it's exhausting, but having some mechanical challenge in an RTS game is actually good. It's a game. And I think that's what makes Brood War so fun, is you have these really interesting micro interactions, and you have these really interesting macro interactions. You know, a game or a franchise that does as well as Age of Empires. I love macroing in Age of Empires. So, I mean, you literally have a post on TL about this from the SC2 Alpha. I don't know. Is my opinion allowed to change and develop? Am I running for president now or something, where I say one thing and I can't change my views on things? I mean, I have no idea what the post is, but oh, you mean I've been right for a long time? Okay, I was like, I don't know what post you're talking about, because I'm pretty sure this is my take on it back then. It's a game. I don't know why RTS and strategy games have these people that they want it to be like Go or something, or like chess without a clock. It's a computer game. It's a really invigorating, action-packed computer game. And the macro components are fun. The micro components are fun. I think there are ways to make new RTS games that are interesting, and exciting without just having a busted, shitty, user interface or bad pathing. But yeah, let me go on with this video.
War were changed to simplify the movements and increase the number of units on a single hotkey, then the game would be fundamentally broken, because the difficulty of moving certain units and armies is part of the balance of the game. Certain units and compositions would be completely broken if they didn't require so much time or attention to utilize.
Yeah, this is 100% true. By the way, when they designed StarCraft 2, they didn't want you to control as many units as possible. Warcraft 2, I think you could control 9. And in StarCraft 1, it's 12. So they tried to move it up a little bit. But even back then, they had an idea like, okay, there should be we're going to try to find some kind of a Goldilocks control group amount that, will not let you just grab everything and move it at once.
Likewise, buildings cannot be grouped on a single hotkey, which forces players to return to base in most cases in order to create rounds of units, which is called macro. The more adept the player is at hitting their macro, the more time they can focus on moving their clumsy units and adjusting their limited hotkeys to suit the current game state. There are many more examples, but I won't go on. These difficulties, when added together, create a skill ceiling that is infinitely high. No game of Brood War is perfect because no player can juggle all tasks and army movements perfectly. The players are forced to split their attention and mistakes are commonly made, even at the very pinnacle of play. When Blizzard made StarCraft 2, they set out to correct all these so-called problems with the game. They created a game where units move smoothly and nearly uniformly, where they slip by each other easily when there is space to do so, and the pathing rarely becomes an issue. They made control groups unlimited, so that massive armies can be moved with a single command and macro cycles can be hit with ease. These quality of life improvements made playing the game much less cumbersome, but lowered the overall skill ceiling of the game. Because the mechanics of the game are so simplified, the focus then changes to strategy, metagame, and surprise in tournaments for players to win. We rarely see SE2 players at the highest level who stream regularly, because if a Grandmaster player on the ladder knew exactly what build they were going against, they could counter it and stand a high chance of winning. Any diamond...
Okay, I don't know that statement's true. I feel like there's a ton of people that are good that are streaming all the time. I feel like there's and StarCraft 2 has an insanely high skill ceiling. Yeah, there's a lot of execution. This is where I do feel like we got people from each of the StarCrafts that don't understand each other. I like both. I feel like I can defend and be critical of both. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, so I disagree with them there. There's just a ton of StarCraft 1 streamers. There's like I think there's more than there are StarCraft 2 streamers. I think there's more people streaming StarCraft 2 than StarCraft 1. So I could be wrong about that, but I mean, the thing that makes StarCraft 2 so good and also brutal is that it is so fast. I didn't even realize how fast it was till I came back and started casting StarCraft 1 right before Remastered came out. It's so fast. It's crazy. And that actually in some ways makes it really hardcore and hard for people to get into. So, I feel like a lot of what this guy is saying about StarCraft 1 is true, but he seems to have a kind of a odd take on StarCraft 2 and what's going on there. I was including people who are streaming on Africa TV. I meant just streaming in general, online encounters.
Plus player can hit a build almost to perfection with very little difference between their macro and the macro of a professional player. Brood War, on the other hand, has a huge community of professional players that became streamers or streamers that became professional. The difference between S-rank players and professional players in Brood War is vast, and although they can sometimes take games off the professionals, it is clear that they cannot hit the builds quite the same as a pro. Often, even losing situations and build orders can still result in a win because the skill gap in terms of macro and mechanics is so huge. An average player like myself, who watches a professional Brood War game, stands in awe at the sheer level of skill displayed in nearly every game. The moral of the story here is that video game creators, not just Blizzard, are making a huge mistake. When you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. These companies have the ability to constantly patch their games and update them to try and keep things fresh, so they feel obligated to do so. Game developers have the ability to streamline their gameplay to make things as easy as possible for the players, so they create games that are too easy to master. Very few developers realize that letting a game become...
Now, he's basically making the Dark Souls argument, which I think Dark Souls was a good reminder to all these game developers that people don't want their hands held. But again, I feel like StarCraft 2 is really hard to master. StarCraft 2 is like a fucking hard game. By the way, a lot of the top StarCraft 1 pros, they like StarCraft 2. They have respect for the game. They think it's a good game. I have met StarCraft pros that would play either the StarCrafts, but they know they can make more money in one. So, and you know, people, they got to make a living, right? But anyways, I'll let this video finish and then we'll...
Cumbersome and broken as it is, just leaving it out there and allowing players to figure out ways to overcome those challenges can create an amazing gameplay experience. In the end, I think that Blizzard abandoning SC2 and leaving the balance of the game up to the community could be a good thing. Community members are the ones who care most about the game, and their creativity and passion might just make StarCraft 2 better than it ever was under Blizzard. And that's where I want to leave this video, on a hopeful note. Make sure to leave your comments below.
So, I mean, I will tell you personally, it was devastating for everybody when Blizzard was no longer able to support StarCraft 2. People lost money. People, you know, weren't able to do what they want to do full time. We're lucky that other entities like the Saudi Esports Federation have stepped in to try to support StarCraft 2. I think he makes some very good points about StarCraft 1, but I think he does seem to misunderstand StarCraft 2 and its situation. And you know, the damage Blizzard took, I think really when they were at the peak of you know, making StarCraft 2 as good as it could have been. When they collapsed, it did create a big hole. Yes, Korea has, you know, the Korean esports scene, but that never got to grow for StarCraft 1 because they, you know, tried to push the publishers out, the people that had way more money that could have grown it along with them. So, yeah, I just wanted to react to that video. I hope you guys like this kind of content. Let me know in the comments section what you think about this. Is your question why isn't StarCraft 2 any good like Brood War tasteless? This is me reacting to his video. Anyways, I think some very valid points of what makes StarCraft 1 great, maybe some historical inaccuracies. And yeah, maybe not understand. I guess if you're a hardcore StarCraft 1 fan, and you haven't been following Blizzard or StarCraft 2, I think you gotta go back and see what they did. And you know, really, what Mike Morhaime wanted to do with StarCraft 2 was make StarCraft as global as possible and really share that with everybody. He was really into esports and, you know, he went to a live tournament in Korea and said he felt like he was in the future. Like he was seeing the future happen now. And unfortunately, you know, Blizzard collapsed and here we are. But anyways, I like both the StarCrafts. They're excellent. Hopefully we have some more good RTSs in the future. And be sure to check out Cyan SC and his YouTube channel. That's where this original video is. Check out his cast. He's an excellent caster. Have a good day. And also, see the APM shirt? Go to tastelessthreads.com to get that. Have an amazing day, and I'll see you in a future video. Bye-bye.